What's up, guys? This is White Manga here with a new video, and this video is going to be me kind of teaching you guys how to use manuscript paper. That's like comic book paper, the manga paper. I'll tell you what type of paper to use, and kind of briefly touch on the types that are out there. It took a while to fully grasp, and I feel I've fully grasped it enough to where I feel very comfortable sharing it with you guys, so you guys can really get some really good information on how to use this paper. There are many ways on how to use it, but I kind of share like my way and almost like an industry standard, almost that shonen, especially if you want that shonen style, Shonen Jump, Naruto, One Piece kind of style of cut it using this paper. This is the video for you. The paper we're going to focus on this video is the Deleter Type A B4 paper. Now it comes in like two weights. The heavier paper is just harder to bend. It's basically the better one because when you erase or you're drawing, it's not going to bend as much because it's heavier. But that's the paper we're going to focus on. There are many types: type A, type B, type C, but type A is the one with the guidelines. If you have type B without guidelines, you can recreate the guidelines, but it's going to be very difficult because the guidelines have like rulers, and it's like constructing your own ruler and blah blah blah. So best case scenario, you need type A paper. Sometimes you use type B, which is the same paper, it's just no guidelines, but you might want to do that for, I don't know, maybe you want to do some kind of illustration that you don't want any guidelines for, and maybe you're going to scan in with color. But even though you scan in with color and the guidelines, there's still ways to remove the guidelines because the guidelines are blue in color, and when you scan in, the blue is not going to show if you edit the paper the right way or you scan it in the right way. Scanning in the paper the right way is scanning in. Maybe it's a colored illustration you scan in, and you can increase the contrast and brightness to where the blacks are like flat black, and all the light blue lines, because they're really light, right? The light blue lines disappear. Or if it's a manga page and it's a black and white grayscale kind of page, and all that's on the page is ink or tone. If you digitally tone, then it'll just be ink, and then you put the tones digitally. But if you just have like an inked paper and there's all this ink there, you want to scan in black and white or line art, depending on the scanner you're using. And that way, the blues don't show at all, and all this shows is the dark, crisp, black, flat line. Now, I'll go into detail in a second on what the guidelines are for and how they help you, how they guide you, basically. But I want you to know that there are many ways to panel the page, and there are many ways to go about using this paper. And I've seen people that panel maybe a panel will look like a triangle, or some people panel freehand, and sometimes, depending on the aesthetic of the comic, that works. It works perfectly for them. But for this video, I'm just going to teach you guys like how I panel, and it's more similar, closer to the mainstream Japanese style of paneling pages, especially action comics. So that's the shonen comic, and most of my panels. And the panels, for those of you who don't know, are basically the boxes that the art goes in on the page. So you can have a page with like 3 panels, right? So my panels always have 4 sides. Always, they always have 4 sides. I never do 3-sided panels. No, you're not going to see any weird shapes or triangles for me, and I always use rulers. Again, there are many ways to do this, but I'm just kind of letting you guys know what you're getting into for this particular video, and how I panel and do things like that, and how I use the manuscript paper to get the result that I want. So even though I'm going to be using the computer to show you guys how to use the manuscript paper, because if I use a regular camera, the camera might not be able to get the blue lines. You'll not be able to see the blue lines clearly on the paper itself. And I have another video that goes into some detail on how to use the paper, or the paper itself, and the paper to get, which I'll link to. And that's more, you can see me holding the paper and doing things with the paper. But this video, I'm going to use the computer screen so you guys can actually see the lines and things like that, and it's much easier. But generally, when I'm using Deleter paper type A, the one with the guidelines, I always have my ruler on standby. I have pencils, erasers, and a Sakura Micron to draw the straight lines. And the lines, the panel lines, the lines that I use to draw the panels, I use the 0.8, or no, the 0.8, or the 8, right? In the Sakura Microns, because that's like the thickest one, and so you can really see that thick black line when you're drawing the panels. First thing to know is that, type A, again, guidelines. Type B doesn't have guidelines. They're type C and D, but forget about those for now. For this video, we're going to focus on A. And sometimes they use these papers in like Western comics, and you will see like the blue lines, they're blue, or sometimes you might see some that are red, actually. Not the leader paper, but like some other kind of paper, some other make, and it'll be red, but it'll be a very light red, right? Because these light colors don't show when you scan them in black and white, or you scan them in color, but you increase the contrast, or contrast and brightness, and maybe exposure a little bit. And sometimes for comics in the and here in the West, or anywhere in the world really, they might use a paper with maybe very little guidelines at all, but they draw this. Because for me, when I create pages, I go with pencils, and then I go over the pencils with ink, and then I erase the pencils. Sometimes people go over with pencils, they put it in the light box, where they put the paper under a light box, and then they put the paper they want to ink over that, and then they ink. So you have two papers with pencils and inks. But there's another way where the penciler will use blue lead pencil, and they will draw with the blue lead. They basically draw with like a blue pencil, which is actually kind of hard, a little bit harder to erase. But they use the blue lead pencil, and then someone else goes over the blues with ink, and they don't have to erase anything, because when they scan it in, the blues aren't going to show anyway. Sometimes they do the blues and they scan it in color and send it to an inker if the inker is not with them in the room, and the inker can ink wherever he is or she is in the world, and the ink over the blues, and then they scan in black and white or scan in line art. Sometimes it depends on the scanner you're using. Future video, I will do a video where I'm actually scanning a page of mine from my comic Apple Black, and y'all can check that out. So it'll be like a good example for you, and I'll talk about the scanner I have and things like that. So stay tuned for that. Now we're going to take a look at the actual paper from using my computer here, and we're going to talk about the lines, the guidelines, and what they do, what they're for, and how they guide you, and how they help you if you want to have your comic, especially if you want to have your comic be printed. Because again, if your comic is going to be completely digital, you can do whatever you want, right? You don't have to. This is for like cases where maybe you want to, either you want to replicate that shonen style of pages and things like that, or you want your comic to be in print in some way. This is usually, my recommendation for how to go about, using the paper. So it includes what the lines are for, where they go, how they guide you, if you're going to have text anywhere that's supposed to be read, and like where to have the text, because you can't have text all over you can't have text at the edge of the paper, because it's going to affect the printing, and some printers probably wouldn't even accept you at all, and you're going to have issues with that. So most of your text once is supposed to be centered. Again, I'll go into detail, but that's what we're going to go into now. Let's take a look at Type A, Deleter Type A B4 paper. So here, I've opened, I'm opening up the pages, and I have one image that kind of just has with the names on it, and then I have just one simple image. And so we're going to start with one with names on it, and you can see how the paper looks, so you wouldn't make a mistake when you're purchasing it, and or trying to find it. I'll leave a link in the description to where you can find the leader paper. Yeah, so you can get that. There are many ways. Honestly, if you just Google it, and if you really want to find it, you can find it on your own. But I just make it easier a little bit, so then it'll be in the description. So here, let's look at what these lines are for, and your names. So first off, we have the cut of marks. Pay no attention to that for now. Not important. I'm basically going to give you like a base. Because if we go over everything, this video is going to be ridiculously long. So I'll just give you the things that I use, things that guide me. Focus on that. So that's the cut of marks, but pay no attention to that for now. That's like the middle of the ruler. I use the rulers to, that's the center mark. It's like middle of the ruler. It's usually a 0 there, and you have the zeros counting from 1, 2, 3 on the left, and 1, 2, 3 on the right. The same thing is done on all sides of the paper, and it's called the ruler. The whole plate, they're all called a ruler. Hmm. I can use the ruler to draw like, very straight lines, and that's how I know the line is straight and it's like parallel to the edge of the paper. So drawing a line here with Manga Studio again. I would have loved to do this traditionally, but you guys might not be able to see the blue lines on the paper, so I decided to do this on the computer. But drawing a straight line in Manga Studio, you kind of hold down Shift and you draw the line from one end to the other. So it's hitting the 2 at the top and it's hitting the 2 at the bottom. And this is you can create like 90 degrees. If you have another line perpendicular, you can create 90 degrees. But this is like a straight 180, right? And it's parallel to the left and the right side of the paper. This is a very straight line, and these are part of the things that I use the ruler to do, because I know I'm hitting a 2 at the top and I'm going to hit a 2 at the bottom. And then I can have another line right next to it, and that's like going to be like cutting the panels, and you'll see what I do here in a second. I've essentially created a page with four panels. Now, I know you guys are probably thinking about what about the other edges of the panels? What about the rest of the panel? I'll talk about that in a second. We'll get into that. But this is basically how I do it. And you have like the horizontal line, the space between the panels from a horizontal standpoint is kind of thicker than the vertical. And I'll go into detail on what that is in a second as well. You have the printing cutoff line, and that's like where no art, like when the paper let's say you turn in the paper to your publishers and things like that. That's not always going to be the case. Sometimes you guys will probably be independent doing things yourself, but usually nothing gets printed beyond the cutoff line. That's the printing cutoff line. Like nothing gets printed after that. The whole paper gets used. You make use of all the paper, but you just make sure that all your important art is within the printing cutoff line, because nothing gets past that. That's the basic gist. Again, as we move forward in this video, I'll explain a whole lot more. And you got your frame marks. Again, gonna pass over that. Just make this video as quick as possible, because you'll still get all that stuff as we move on in the video. Then you got your drawing frame. The drawing frame is basically, it's a dotted line. If you zoom in, it's actually a dotted line, and that's where your panels go. If you want like a simple page and you have your panels and blah blah blah, that's where your panel lines are. If you just want to panelize, that's where they go. And if you, let's say you can see like the third panel, maybe the third panel has some really revealing artwork or something like that. And again, you see I'm giving an example of where the cutoff line show, because any art beyond that, the cutoff line does not get shown. But you can see that the panel kind of expands. Maybe it's an action scene, or maybe something a character is saying something really important, and you want the viewer to focus on that panel. So you expand that panel, and anytime you expand the panel, you expand the panel to the fullest, right? You don't expand it halfway. I'll explain what I mean in a second. Again, when you expand it, you expand it to the opposite direction of the gutter. Now, the gutter is if you're holding a book and you open the book, the gutter is basically the middle of the book, where there isn't any art, where all the pages meet, right? That is the gutter. So if you're expanding a panel, you're expanding it the opposite direction of the gutter, because you don't want the art to kind of get lost in the gutter. Now, I'm speaking from experience, because I've made mistakes like this, and I have art going into the gutter, or I have panels. Panels kind of expanding into the gutter, or things like that, and it kind of messes up the book in a way. And because the gutter here, as you can see, is on the left, that means this is a right page. That means this page is on the right. Again, I'm only erasing just to give an example of, again, this is within the drawing frame. You can draw beyond the drawing frame, but you can't have text beyond the drawing frame. This book, these guidelines are here to help you to not make mistakes when you're printing. And all the lines here are kind of parallel to your counterparts. So all the horizontal lines in this, just for this page, this example, all the horizontal lines are parallel to each other, and all the vertical lines are parallel to each other. Obviously, I'm gonna give examples with panels that are more complicated than this. But again, you want the panel, the drawing frame, like there shouldn't be any art like passing the drawing frame to the gutter, right? If you have art that extends, it should go to the opposite direction of the gutter, and I'll explain what I mean in a second. So here's an example of if the page was to the left. If the page was to the left, and just forget about the drawing here, the crude lines, they're supposed to be straight. But if the page was to the left, this is how I will extend maybe that fourth panel. So this is a left page, and the gutter here in this scenario is actually, excuse me, ooh, don't feel so good. But the gutter is actually on the left side, right? So this is on the right side. Sorry, this is a left page, so the gutter is on the other side. So this is just an example. Now, notice that the spaces between panels that form some kind of vertical line are thinner than the ones that are forming horizontals, and I'll go into detail again of what I mean by that. But things to know is that gutter has its own space. That like the drawing line, the drawing frame, is designed that way to give enough space between the panels and the gutter, right? So you don't want the panels should never extend towards the gutter. You should never have text that goes beyond the drawing line to the gutter. And if you're not understanding what I'm saying completely, just keep watching. There'll be more examples, and you would understand what I'm saying as we go on. So here, getting rid of all those extra arts to make things a little more visible. So here I'm drawing a straight line, and usually if I was drawing traditionally, I'll to know if it's a straight line, I'll take from one end, maybe a 2 on the left and a 2 on the right, and I'll draw a straight line that goes right across, and I know that line is 180 degrees, and if we drew a line perpendicular to it, well, if you draw a line perpendicular, it's always going to form a 90, but it's a straight line going from one end to the other. Here, one thing to know, again, I'm drawing the panels that are right beside each other. The space in between them is thinner than panels that are above each other. It kind of has this. It almost makes it easier to read sometimes. Trust me, but it's kind of like the Shonen style of doing things. And the space in between is kind of like a 7 millimeters, I think. And the one side by side, I usually do like a 2, but when the panel is above another panel, I do like a 7. And again, if you don't get it, give me a second. You will by the end of this video, hopefully. And this page, I'm just giving an example of how to read the page. If this page is going from right to left, this is how you read the page. Most of you know how to read comics. I'm just doing this to make sure everyone's on the same page. If the reading orientation of your book was from right to left, this is how you do it. But if it's from left to right, I mean, the first panel will still be the first panel, but you wouldn't start reading from the right. You start reading from the right, from the left. I'm sorry, and then you read the 2s and the 3s switch. Again, given another example of, you can see the panel is above another panel, so it's thicker than the one above. Again, for this video, it's kind of a sketchy vibe, so they're not the same, but I always try to make sure the distance between the panels are consistent throughout. So if I'm doing 2 panels, are as consistent as possible. If I'm doing 2 panels that are right beside each other, the distance is kind of consistent throughout. So you can see here, panel 1 and panel 3, the distance between panel 1 and panel 3 is supposed to be the same between panel 3 and 4. And you try to be as consistent as possible to make the page look as professional as possible. Same thing goes if you're creating the page from right to left. So the distance between panel 1 and 2 should be the same between 2 and 3, and then the distance between 4 and 2 is going to be the same for any other scenario like that. Here again, for just giving an example, the distances usually for me I'm like 2 millimeters or two, whatever it is, like the two dots. I'll zoom in for in a second, show you what I mean. But if that's a 2, then the other one's a 7. That's usually how I go about paneling for my pages. Again, in this scenario, in this actual instance, is a little bit flexible. You can really do whatever you want here, but I'm just trying to give you guys that standard look. And if you go look at most shonen comics, this is kind of how it's done. Maybe a 2 and a 6, or maybe a 3 and a 6, or a 3 and a 7, but this is a good distance. So what I mean is here you have, that's what I mean, 7, just 7 of those, and then that's for like the horizontal stuff. And then here, it's kind of like a 1 and 2. Again, maybe you could do 3. 3 is not, or 2.5 is not bad, but that's what I do for the verticals. You always want to have a consistent line. Like most of these lines need to be parallel. At least again for the look we're going for. Again, you can have a comic do whatever you. If it's your comic and maybe the lines not being parallel add to the story, add to your style, add to your theme, then be my guest. But for what we're going for in this tutorial, most of them need to be parallel. And again, there are instances where they're not going to be parallel, just to be not to confuse you guys. I'll give an example of that as we go on later in this tutorial. So here, I'm about to expand this expand panel 4, and for panel 4, if I expand it, I'll expand it to the fullest. And usually when you want to expand the panel, that means something's going on the page. You don't want the lines to bend. That's a no-no. You don't do stuff like that because that's not parallel at all. It's kind of distracting. It needs to be parallel for the style we're going for. So if I was going to expand this actual panel, I'll go to the fullest. I wouldn't go halfway. Again, you want to be within you want to go past the drawing frame, and you want to go past the cutoff marks, right? But even though the art at the cutoff marks are supposed to get cut off, right? Most of this within that is going to get shown. Anything beyond that's not gonna. But it's your comic. It depends on. It's really for printing. That's how it's supposed to be. But obviously, if you're completely independent, you can do whatever you want. Now, things like this, the way I'm cutting this panel right now, you can do stuff like this, but I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it. If you're going to expand, I say expand to the fullest, right? Completely to the fullest. But just make sure that your text is within the drawing frame. If you have any text at all. So let's say you have a text bubble, it's within the drawing frame. Now, if you have art, maybe a building, and it has like a text, and maybe that text is not important, maybe that text is like part of the art, that's different. But I'm talking about text that the audience, the reader is supposed to read. It's supposed to be within that drawing frame. That's within the dotted line. Okay. Stuff like this, I don't do this. It would work as long as your text is within the drawing frame. Again, but it's a no-no for me. I always try to make the lines parallel, and if I'm not expanding it, it's going to be on the dotted line. It's going to be within on the drawing frame itself. And you can see like the distance, or like the space between the say panels 2 and 3 and 2 and 4. That's also parallel to the drawing line. Now again, I'm gonna give instances where you don't want things parallel, but even though they're not parallel, they still have this professional look. And as usually in action scenes and things like that, I will give examples. Just relax. I'm just dropping down the basics for now. So just follow me as best as you can. This video is pretty long. So you can always come back to it when you want to panel your pages and kind of listen to what I'm saying every now and then and get like the full lowdown of what you want. Anyways, moving on. Now here's an instance where this isn't parallel to. It's parallel to, like, the space between the panels are parallel, right? It's not parallel to any other lines, but at least they're parallel to each other, right? And you can do stuff like this. This stuff like this is okay. And you can usually when I have lines that aren't straight, I still make sure they're parallel. The space is parallel to each other. The space is equal throughout. And maybe you want to expand it. You can do stuff like this, and again, I'm expanding it to the fullest. And I use the ruler, say at the top, at the bottom, to like I use the ruler to make sure that the space between the panels are equal throughout. So that they're parallel to each other. So those are the only two lines that are parallel to each other in this page. And since this is a panel that I'm expanding, I expand it to the fullest. I'm gonna give a little sketch here just to show what I mean. Again, you see that bubble is within the drawing lines. It's not outside. Well, the drawing frame. Sorry. Most of the stuff, I'm not like a super duper expert. I'm like kind of like giving you a lowdown of what I know. So most of these are things that over the years I've learned, and I'm still improving on and things like that. So this is the best of me right now. This is an instance where we could have done something, something like this. Well, let's do something different. I'm going to do another line that's not so parallel. But it'll get the job done. You'll see what I mean? So here, from a horizontal standpoint, those two are parallel to each other, right? They're not parallel to anything else on the page, but they're parallel to each other, right? You want that uniform look to some degree. And most of the times where you do panels like this, again, it's like action scenes or something crazy is going on, and the audience is supposed to be a little disoriented, right? That's where you do stuff like this, right? Even though it's not parallel to like any other lines, those two lines are at least parallel to each other, right? And again, if you notice how these panels are still within the drawing lines, but anytime I want to expand a panel, I expand it beyond everything. Even though it's going to get cut off depending on the printers or your publisher or anything like that, or how you produce your pages. But this is how you use the paper, right? The tutorial is teaching you how to use the paper. Anything you do after that it's really up to you. And if you're going digital, you can do stuff like this. I mean, I'm not. This is not part of the tutorial. This is not a Manga Studio tutorial. If you want to learn stuff like that, I'll go and have like a separate video for that. But just giving showing an example of fun stuff you can do when you're playing with mixed media. So even though you drew these or you inked this traditionally, when you scan in the computer, you can play with Manga Studio and add some tone and add some speed lines or things like that. I'll have a video on speed lines later. You can do them. Most of my speed lines are done manually because Manga Studio currently doesn't have too many options, at least that I know of. But we're going to skip that. That's not part of the tutorial. Moving on, this is just how to use the paper itself. So here, so I'm getting rid of the art a little bit. Sorry, spring is a horrible time for me. And I'm going to give an example of, or explain further when I mean, the text bubbles. So you see examples of text bubbles. They're all within the drawing lines. They're the drawing frame. You can have text bubbles do whatever you want. They could be, like at the edge, at the edge of the panel, so you might not even see them fully, like a full circle or egg-shaped thing. You can have them above a panel. Right? Maybe the person's supposed to visualize that the text kind of overlays both panels. Maybe the person is talking about that. So now that kind of text bubble, that doesn't fly. whether it's at the gutter, because in this case, this page is actually a right page, right? This is a right page because you have the panels when they expand to the left, when they expand to the right, they expand in that way, and they don't expand to the left at all, right? And that whole part of the page is the gutter, right? Text there is a no-no. It's a big no-no, right? And if you do have text, it should be within the drawing frame. Now, this is for those of you who have kind of not been understanding what the gutter is. This is what the gutter is, like in between pages, right here. That's the gutter. So you have your left page, you have your right page, and that right there is the gutter, right? So these are things you want to keep track of when you're creating your paper, creating your comic, right? If you want that, excuse me, that shonen style and things like that. But again, it depends on what kind of comic you're creating. Sometimes you're creating a comic that's maybe has this Korean webtoon kind of thing, and you only it's a web comic where all you do is scroll from top to bottom. But these are for like books that if you're creating a book that you want to, you see it becoming in print someday or things like that. These are things you need to keep track of where your pages are, right? And not just from a professional standpoint, but even from like like telling I guess that's still professional, but like a story standpoint, maybe you want to reveal something, right? But you want the audience or your reader, your fan base or supporters to flip the page to release for that reveal to happen. So if you got to know when your audience is supposed to flip a page, so that way when you're creating your comic or storyboarding, you keep track of what's a left page, what's a right page, right? So when maybe they're reading the comic and you're building tension with each panel from the left page to the right page, and maybe this is if the book is read from left to right, and if it's read from left to right and they open the page, you kind of build some kind of tension or something, right? To up until the first panel on the left to the last panel on the right, to when they flip the page, there's like a big reveal, right? So you have to keep track of the pages, keep track on what's left or what page is on the left, keep track on what page is on the right, and you keep track of all that stuff. Again, here example, if I was going to do the bubbles, the text bubble or text balloon should be within the drawing frame. Not necessarily the text, to be honest, the art itself, like the art of the bubble and the balloon, can be it can do whatever it wants. I mean, remember, it'll still get cut off at the cutoff marks, right? But the text itself needs to be within the drawing frames. Like that's nothing, like I don't know how else to put it. So it should be within the drawing frames, but always keep track of where the cutoff line is and where the drawing frames are. So right there, right, the drawing frame, text is in there. Text cannot come out of, like, any kind of text cannot come out of there. Now, again, if it's text that's kind of part of the art, if it's like art, not necessarily actual text that you're supposed to read, maybe there's a sign on the building, right? And the sign says LexCorp, right? Maybe it's not important. That can get cut off. That can do whatever it wants. But if it's like text from like text bubbles, or if let's say you're writing a novel, right? And all this page you didn't draw any art, right? You draw on the text, right? All the text needs to be within the drawing frame. Even if even text that let me see. It's just safe to have the text within the drawing frame, right? There are cases where you kind of want the text. Pagination. Pagination is where it's just adding page numbers to your pages. It's a little tricky, things get a little shaky and a little trickier there. But even then, the text needs to be any text that someone's supposed to read should be within the drawing frames. When it comes to pagination, I'll let's lay off of pagination for now, and how pages are numbered and things like that. You can see the space right under the drawing frame, right? That's usually where the page numbers would go, right? In when you're adding actual text, that's usually where the page numbers would go. So if the page is usually if the page is a right page, the text will be the pagination will be on the bottom right. But forget about pagination for now. As you can see in this panel, in this text balloon, text bubble, it would work because the text itself is within the drawing frame and the art of the text balloon is beyond. But you don't want to do stuff like that. You want you want your text to be centered. Again, these are things that I've made mistakes. I've made some mistakes before, so I had to go in. Like I wasn't thinking about printing, so I made these kind of mistakes, and I had to go back in and shift text closer to the drawing frame, so that I'll be able to print my pages. So I've made these kind of mistakes before. Don't want you guys to make the same. So we're gonna move on. So here is we're winding down this tutorial. Here is the page as a whole. This is how when you get the page, this is how it looks. So let me give an example of how when you scan in a page, how the page is supposed to be when you just ink, right? So I'm just going to give a little demo on how the page is going to look when you're done inking. Say you're done inking, this is how it's supposed to look. Here are some pages that I've done in the past. These are not Apple Black pages, by the way, but you'll see what I mean. And I'm just going to adjust it to kind of give you guys better visuals. So I just imported this image, and I'm going to show you how it would look, how it looked when I inked it. When I inked and I scanned it in, this is how it looked. And again, when it comes to penciling and inking, I have videos on that and how I pencil and how I ink. The problem with those videos is I panel differently. I used the leader paper different from how I'm telling you to use it right now. So when it comes to using the actual paper, don't listen to me. But when it comes to the actual process of inking and penciling and all that stuff and toning, you can watch those videos. I'll leave links to those, and you understand what I'm saying. I probably need to leave an annotation there pointing to this video and a better way to use the leader paper than how I used it in the past. To prevent the mistakes that I made for my first book. Anyways, I'm still adjusting the page to show you how it look. For someone like me who, for the most part, creates pages, everything by myself, I kind of have to keep track because I scan in and I wouldn't see where I wouldn't see the blue lines when I scan in, so I don't know where. I wouldn't know where I scan in black and white or line art, so I wouldn't know where the cutoff mark is. So usually with ink, I always leave a dot at the edges, and you'll be able to see the dot a little bit if you look closely at the edges of where the cutoff marks are, so that when I scan in and I can't see the blue, at least I'll see where the black dots for the indicating the rectangle for the cutoff marks, so I can cut my paper myself, right? Or you can scan in color and you see the whole thing, and then you can play with the contrast and brightness afterwards. But that's not how I do it. I usually just scan in line art, black and white, but I just put the dots on the cutoff marks so I know where they are. So this is how the page looks. You can see the dot right there at the cutoff mark. That's where that's. I'm just using the green to highlight, because when you scan in, you're not going to see the blue line. So at first I was confused where the line, what I was supposed to cut off and what I was supposed to leave. So I usually have those, just a little black dot right there that I can erase in the computer if it's distracting. And this is how the page looked. And when I was done, you'll see what I cut off in a sec. That gets cut off. That gets cut off. I'm not actually cutting it off here in this video. I'm just showing you what gets cut off. So the green you don't see, right? And here I pulled the panels, right? I pulled it completely to the top, right? You can do stuff like that. You can pull panels to the complete top, or you come to the complete left. You just need to be consistent, and you can't like pull it halfway. So the green is the cutoff part, right? That's what I did for this video. And so all you see is the middle, and from the middle, then I do some editing. I clean things up, and I put tone, put in text, and you'll see that in a second. But to give an example of what I was talking about, what I did in that page is here. You see, for these panels, I kind of expand both the left side and the bottom. And again, remember how I told you that every panel, all my panels have 4 sides. You can look here; they all have 4 sides. Even though it expands to the edge of the paper, you can still just count the edge of the paper as the 4th side. But moving on, you can see I did. This is kind of like stuff I did, so where I only dragged it to the top. I didn't drag it to the to both sides. You can do stuff like that. Just remember that the bubbles and the text especially, needs to be within the drawing frame. So you can do stuff like this, or and stuff like that. No, you're never gonna see no triangles from me. And I think I'll give another example of things that I don't do. Stuff like this, even though it's parallel to the its opposite side, I still don't do stuff like this. Yeah, most of the lines of the once it's on the dotted line of the drawing frame, I always have it straight, right? So when I expand to the edge. I don't play with the line itself, bending it to be parallel to the other side. It doesn't. I don't do that basically. So here, you can pull it to the top, and forget about the sides, or you can only pull it to the sides. Usually I only do stuff like this when there's something special about the panel. Maybe something's going on in that panel. Maybe it's an action scene and someone's revealing something, and like to draw more attention to it. So that's is basically what I do. Or you can forget about pulling it as a whole. Forget about pulling it at all, and you just have it within the within the confines of the drawing frame, right? And this works. Again, going through this video, I realize that maybe things might be confusing here and there. I'm trying to be as correct as I can be. If you have any questions, you can just leave it in the comments, and I'll be happy to answer as best as I can. So here, back to this again. The green in this video, in this illustration, is what gets cut off, and then I clean things up like some dirt and things like that. Sometimes you can scan in, like when I scan in the page, I cut it off immediately before I start toning. Or you can tone the page, before you even cut anything off, and cut it after. But for the way I work, anything works as long as you end up with the same result. Is up to you. So I have the page. You can tone before or after you cut off the cutoff marks. But again, it's up to you. For me, I tone and then I cut. I cut it before, right? I cut it before I even start toning or doing anything. I cut it before. To be honest, best practice is to cut it after. Just in case you want to print for maybe you want to print something, like things change and you want to print, and the new printer has like different kind of guidelines. At least you have the original art. Here, if you cut the way I cut, I've already cut off the inks, right? The inks are gone already. Like the edges are gone already before you put in the tone. So the best practice is actually to cut after you tone and you've cleaned things up. But and maybe I'll adopt that style. It's just that for the current pages I'm working on, I've already started this way, so I'm just trying to finish this way. Then moving on in the future, things will change. God, I really hope you understood what I just said. And then here's an example of a finished page. Once I've I get my page, I ink it, I scan it in line art or black and white, and then I cut off the edges, and then I go in with tone. I clean it up, go on with tone, and add text. And this is like an end result of a page right here. Now this is a JPEG. This is just a flat of the page. I still have the original page with the layers for the tone, layers for the text, for each text balloon, the layers for everything that's layered right there, like all the tone and text, basically the tone, text, and the line art itself. And this is the LIP file, and that's the Manga Studio file. You don't have to. Most of what we've done doesn't have to be Manga Studio. It could have been Photoshop. You can still do all of this with Photoshop. But for this video, I'm using Manga Studio, and it's something I'm used to, especially if I'm creating comics, and it's where I'm my fastest. But you see, making some panels visible. That was the layer of just the line art. And if you make it visible, you can see kind of I'm using these layers to kind of show you what I've done and how I've played around with the pages. And this is how I end up with a final page. So thanks guys for watching. I know this is a really long video. I hope you guys stayed and learned something, a thing or two. I hope this video was useful to you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you got what you needed to get from the video. And that's that. And that's how I create my pages. At least that's how I panel stuff. Now when it comes to actually knowing how to panel and what angles to use, and I think those are separate videos, and I think I've touched on them briefly a little bit, at least when it comes to like angles and shots and things like that in like previous videos. You can check out my channel for more on that. When it comes to how to do speed lines and how to actually do the art and actually how to know the best panel size, or how to actually panel a page, that has to do with like storyboarding, and I have videos on that as well. But I'll have a future video that kind of you probably just watch me panel a page from start to finish, and I'll kind of explain my reasons for why things are paneled certain ways. Or I'll use my book Apple Black, that's currently published on Saturday AM, published and serialized on Saturday AM. For what Saturday AM is, you can go check that out. It has all a bunch of other diverse and interesting comics on there that you can check out. I'll leave links to every major important thing ever about me in the description below, in the about section below. All my social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and all that. So you can check me out if you just finding out about White Manga, or finding out about Saturday AM. Links in the description, about section. Check that out. But for this video, maybe some in the future video, I might use my actual book and go through a scene and explain why I created a panel a certain way, or why the panel is this size, why this panel expanded and this didn't, and things like that. And also that'll help. So you also just stay tuned for that. A lot of ideas for good videos coming soon on this channel. So I hope you guys stay tuned for that. And yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you guys like this video. Please share this video. Leave a comment if you have any questions. I'm sure some of you would. Subscribe to the channel for more. I do lots of tutorials, a lot. And occasionally I do some fun stuff, giveaways, contests, and things like that. So I hope you guys stay tuned for that. And yeah, this is White Manga. Check me out, yo. And I'm out.